Hi there, guys. This is Reasoner with Jason,
Hey.
Squirrel,
Hey.
and today we're talking about being a squad leader in the game squad, newly released game squad, and we're on the unit today. So basically, we're going to be going over some really simple stuff regarding how to be a squad leader in Squad. If you don't know what Squad is, it's a newly released game from the guys that made Project Reality and a number of other developers. It's proven really popular online with casual gamers and serious milsim gamers alike. And what we've noticed, especially now that it's gone into public release, is that a lot of people, maybe not from a milsim background, are having a crack at squad leading. And this is awesome because it's meaning that there's a lot of fresh faces around. But sometimes I think people, don't know if you'd agree, Jason, but sometimes I think people are a little bit nervous about getting into it for the first time.
Yeah, 100%. I think the idea of, for example, the squad leader, it's a hard role to really obtain. It's nothing that you can really step into. People feel like you need experience, but the only way you can improve on it is by just throwing yourself into the deep end. And hopefully, by listening to this video, we'll cover some important points for people that want to get into to squad leading, for that also help the guys that are squad leading at the moment improve.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've boiled down 8 points that we think are sort of your guide, your Bible, if you like, to squad leading. And we're going to go through those now, and then we'll have some discussion in a sort of podcasty environment as we on go. So cool. Let's start. For reference as well, Squirrel is a long-time player with us, but I think it'd be fair to say, Squirrel, you haven't done that much
slightly less experience when it comes to squad leading. So
yeah,
he's a bit shy. We should
he likes to be at the back, lagging the hard work. You know what I mean? No,
I do the hard graft.
He does the graft, but I think for the benefit of our audience and the viewers, Squirrel's going to try and act as somebody who maybe is like, well, he is less experienced, so he's going to try and drum up some questions as well as we go along and ask maybe what you guys might be wondering while you're watching. Great.
But
so,
if anyone does come up with any questions that we haven't covered, then
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, just make sure you put them in the comments.
Okay, cool. So we'll start now then. So I think the first most important point we want to make, first rule to remember, is keeping your squad informed. This is really important, especially early on in the game, to establish yourself as a good and confident squad leader. So outline the roles that you need. So when people are joining your squad, make sure you've got people in the right positions. There's no point having yourself and a medic and then 5 riflemen. I mean, we've got stuff like the Grenadier, which you use a lot, Jason. You've got your MGs, and all those are really important.
Secondly, then you've got grabbing attention of your squad immediately. It's important that from the very off, from when anyone ever joins the squad, that you assert yourself immediately, either in a friendly way or a serious way, depending on what your playstyle is. By doing this, it opens them up a bit, because some people are shy. I think you can agree, Squirrel, especially the publics that sometimes join, because obviously we are a clan group at the moment. We do normally play with regular people, but we do get some public people coming in. So it's really important to assert your authority, but also remaining friendly. Because if you don't, these guys just.
Well, people don't like armchair generals.
No, of course not. I mean, any squad leader that is micromanaging all the time can get annoying. Get on my tits.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's fair to say, don't be afraid to get serious. You're there to play the game. The game's engine, the mechanics of it are meant to be played. It's not Call of Duty. It's not Team Fortress. There is an element of seriousness. And if you feel the need to say, guys, show up if people are being annoying, or even go as far as to kick people, go ahead and do it. And if you're playing on a server where the admins are half decent, then there shouldn't be any backlash from doing anything like that.
Yeah, you definitely get definitely more out of the gameplay when it is played serious, because it is a very unique PvP game at the moment. I mean, there's not really anything out there like it. I know you've got other games such as Armour and Insurgency, but this game falls into its own when you look at PvP gameplay and its style of how it's meant to be played.
Yeah, cool. So on to point 2. Point 2 is always watch your map. This is, I mean, Jason, I don't know what you think, but when I first started playing Armour and squad leading and doing milsim stuff, this was one of the things that I didn't learn quickly enough. But once I got it, it made a massive difference. So But for a game like Squad, where you can see where your squad mates are on the map using little green circles or dots that appear, I mean, there's literally nothing more valuable than maintaining the knowledge of where those guys are around you.
Yeah, to build on that, it improves your awareness of your squad, yourself, and also your team. There's been countless occasions where I've been in a squad where the squad leader has just failed to check his map, and we've been back capped, and he's sitting in the same point that can't be capped, not helping the team. And again, it really improves that awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Fellas,
definitely.
how important do you think it is for just regular squad members to be keeping an eye on the map?
Oh, I mean, I think probably as valuable as... I mean, as a squad leader, you don't want to be running in first. You don't want to be always in the firefight. So I think it's probably less important for, squad leader. Let's put it like this. Squad leader, I'd say, for me personally, 60 to 70% looking at map. And then when I need to, close the map. And, either... Because you can have the map open and run at the same time in this game. So if you've got the map key set to... So, for example, I've got it as a thumb... I've got it as one of my thumb buttons on my mouse. You can be running around doing stuff with the map open, and then 30% map closed, shooting. Whereas normal players, I think, got just the rest of the squad that are there to do the graft, to make sure that you're effective, and to basically shoot stuff. Maybe those guys would be 30 or 40% with the map open, so they can maintain an awareness of where they are and where their squad mates are. But the primary usage, mostly keep the map closed and focus on following your squad leader's orders and shooting.
So basically what you're saying is that the squad leader shouldn't be at the forefront of contact.
No, absolutely not. No. That's 101, isn't it, Jace? Really?
No, I have to agree, 100%. Again, it depends on the situation and the squad leader, but nearly for me, 80%, 90% of the time, the squad leader should never be taking point. Simply because if the squad leader goes down, the medics have to basically focus on that man, because if you haven't got a rally point in the vicinity, and if you don't have an FOB down, you could be all the way back to the main base and you just lose all momentum in your attack. But for me as well, going back to that point about the other squad members using the map, I think for me anyways, the second most important person to be using the map is the medic. Because people say, people say they go down, but they don't really give their location. Some people use local voice, but it's really important for the medics to actually press I think it's enter to use the map cursor and actually just highlight over the names, because then they can identify where the person's got down and actually respond to that. Yeah,
absolutely. Medics as well, definitely medics being key, but we'll get on to medics later on. Cool. So that's great. You did mention there briefly rally points there, Jason, so that nicely takes us on to point 3, which is coming up next. So point 3, rallies and FOBs. If you don't know what an FOB is, it stands for Forward Operating Base, and a rally point is basically a smaller version of that, which you can't set up defences. So 101, a FOB is something that can be repeatedly spawned on by all of your team. It can be built up using points and defences. If you set up one of these, you're going to need your squad to start digging some sandbags up, X, Y, and Z. And rallies are basically respawn points that only your squad can use. There's a limited number of respawns on it, so once they're all gone, it will disappear, but you can place them more frequently. So those are two things. Hopefully, if you've played the game a little bit, you'll know what those things are. Points on these, then, I think the first one I'd say the most important is to keep up rallies. I mean, the amount of times I've played under a squad leader and they have you're constantly asking, can you put a new rally point down? Can you put a new rally point down? That you just don't need to happen, does it?
Yeah, no, I think that goes back to the idea of momentum, and in squad it is really key to keep momentum in either attack and defence. Like you said, if you lose that rally point, we've said it before, if you lose that rally point, you have to go all the way back to that FOB or the main base, and that could be absolutely miles away, which really does affect your attack and your defence, and you could eventually end up losing the game just because of that.
Absolutely, 100%, all about momentum. And momentum is clearly lost when building an FOB. So if we talk about FOBs briefly,
well, FOBs are, as you probably know, I mean, Reason of School, they're very topical. I've been looking at Reddit and the forums, for example. I mean, you've got people really debating when an FOB should be used, and for me personally, it's something that it depends on the situation. Everything in squad really depends on the situation. And for me, you could probably use an FOB in defence on an objective. a lot of people don't like using that. I mean, for me, the only time when I've really used an FOB on an objective is on, at the moment, I think it's Falls Road. Is it Falls Road? Or is it, I can't remember the map with the... And the castle. The castle is the objective. That's probably the only time I've ever used the FOB as a defensive structure. For me, an FOB has to be away from the objective so that you could launch a counterattack if you end up losing the objective. But again, there's loads of debate surrounding it, and again, everyone's experimenting this stage of the game.
I think the most important point to make on FOBs is, I mean, you hear it sometimes, and I do. It does make me laugh when I hear it. But you're not playing Minecraft, you know, when you're playing this game. If you want to build stuff, I mean, clearly it's enjoyable seeing a little base pop up, and I understand that. But what happens is, and you see it time and time again on servers where people maybe aren't, they've got the grasp of the game, but they're not quite bothered about winning, or they're not really sure what they should be doing, especially newer squad leaders. They're putting FOB down, and then they'll just start obsessing over all the walls, everything around it. They'll spend half an hour getting their squad, digging it all up, and don't get me wrong, they'll look absolutely beautiful. It'll be like fucking Fort Knox up in there, right? It'll be great. But,
I've seen many of them, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is, then they don't want to move because they don't want to lose that FOB. And if you're not moving forward, you're being pushed back. And that's that. And obviously an FOB can be a massive defensive strategic position. That's fine. Yep. But don't put an FOB down at the cost of momentum. If you've not got any momentum at the moment, or other people are pushing that front line forward for you, and you've been maybe another squad leader has tasked you to set up an FOB, grand, perfect, you crack on. But if you're right at the forefront of the fight, keep running them legs and keep pushing back the enemy. Don't just sit stuck in the mud.
Yeah,
I think probably part of that reason for seeing lots of huge FOBs is because the game is still in development. There's not a huge amount of things to do in the game, and people probably just latch on to something that's got a fair bit about it and just feel like building a big base.
Yeah, a lot of experiment. I mean, I know for me, the main gripe at the moment with FOB is when you're inside a compound and the squad that's building it just encloses themselves in, not letting anyone in or out. I mean, that doesn't really help you or your team.
Let's make a little point.
I mean, you've got grenades flying in, like, I mean, it's like raining shrapnel. I mean,
if you're making an FOB, leave one door to the compound open, please. Don't just fucking sandbag up every single door. There's the one thing that really does my tits in is climbing over the walls, falling down and getting injured because they've barricaded in everything. Do you know what I mean? When you have to take fall damage to get out of an FOB.
Yeah, we've seen that a few times.
Which is a nuisance for the medic.
Do it.
It's a nuisance for the medic because then they have to immediately heal like literally about 9 people if you've got a full squad.
There you go. Perfect.
I mean, what's the point?
Right, and that's great. Medic, look at you, Jason, you're on fire. Medics brings us on to point 4, which we'll be talking about in a second. That's medics. Point 4, medics then. Medic's key role, possibly, arguably, the most important role alongside squad leader. And medics. So, point A on medics we've got down. Keep your best men for your medics. So what we mean by this is, if you're playing with guys already, whether it be in TeamSpeak or you're using the in-game comms, but you're rolling with them, your Steam friends, and you know they're reliable, these are the sort of people that you want to make sure are in a medic position. Because as we all know, there's nothing worse than an incapable medic.
Yeah, no, agreed. What you don't want is, like you said, just incompetent people that are taking point, that are getting themselves killed straight away. Because if you do lose your medic or two, however many you've got, no one can get revived, and then they have to respawn, which means you lose tickets, which eventually means you lose the game. Now, another debate as well at the moment for squad leaders is whether you should be using 1 medic or 2. I mean, what's your views on that, guys?
I think two. I think two. Yeah. The situations that we've been involved in needed 2 medics really.
If you've got enough players in your squad, and with the game being so popular as it is, the servers are always full, which means you're going to have 9 guys in your squad. Try and make sure that you've got at least you've got 2 medics, because 1 medic for 9 guys, that means that one medic has to cover all 9 people, including themselves. 2 medics means that number is halved, and so it's very, very beneficial. Keep your medics at the back of your formation, which we'll be moving on to in a second, but keep them at the back of your column. Don't put them in danger. If you're defending a location, set them up in a building. You just say, hey, guys, medics, you go over to that building, cover those doors, and if people need healing, come out and get them, or they'll go to you if they're still mobile, and patch up and keep those guys safe. The other benefit of having 2 medics, obviously, and me and you, Jace, we've done this before. You know, if one medic goes down, the other medic can get him up, and that should be his primary objective, and then both of them can heal everybody else. You know.
Here's a question for you though. But I suppose if you had a reliable second squad that you knew that you could rely on and communicate with that team leader, that squad leader, that if your medic went down, you could rely on that squad leader sending his medic over to revive yours. I guess in that case, you could just roll with 1 medic.
Yeah, maybe.
But it depends on the structure of the other squad and how well they communicate.
Exactly, but the problem is at the moment, in theory now, that is a fantastic idea. Now, real-life military units actually do use that. Like, for example, you have a platoon medic or something like that, but this is a game, you know. Let's just focus on the gameplay. So the problem with what we're having at the moment, and now I'm sure any squad leaders can relate to this, is that if you're on your squad comms, right, very rarely do you find a game at the moment that, well, I found, and I don't know if you agree with this reason there, that you find other squad leaders are on the same page as us. And now either we are ahead of them at the moment in their development in terms of playing the game and actually, like, you know, learning how to squad lead properly, but I just find at the moment that the communication between other squads isn't viable for that kind of option.
I think Squirrel makes a good point. I think for games like Armour and stuff where you're doing it in a closed community, definitely. And if you've got enough people within your group that you can fill 9 squads and you know that other guy is going to be consistent, he's going to be reliable, you know, crack on, you'll do amazingly. But actually, in the majority of public servers, you can't really rely on any of the squads. You can work with them, absolutely. And I would say that I have come across some squad leaders that have been really, really good. Come across some squad leaders that I'd say were even better, you know, far better than me. But like you say, there's a lot of new players coming on, and it means that actually quite a lot of squad leaders as well aren't as confident. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on other squads all the time to do it. And if you've got 2 medics in your own squad, you don't need to. You know, you don't need to worry about that. Cool. So we're going to move on to our next point now, which is formations. Stick with it. So, point 5, formations. Just a brief discussion on those. Formations are something really that you see drilled in. If you're a Milsim player, you really see them drilled in Milsim communities. So guys that have played Armour 2, Armour 3, even Project Reality, and other sort of games like that, people are very, very serious about formations. And it's something that actually isn't picked up on that much in squad. I haven't really seen it being used that much in other squads myself. We try and, you know, keep it pretty good. But formations, what formations can you use? We'd recommend, well, I'd say the column. I know my favourite formation's probably the column. Yours, Jason, you like the wedge. Tell us about the wedge.
First I'll talk about quickly just what my opinions on formation at the moment compared to like Armour and the likes of that. I mean, for me at the moment, squad is obviously it's nowhere near as serious as Armour.
Serious,
no, of course not. So for me, I think it's important as well. We have these formations, but there's a level of flexibility. And again, this goes back to the point previously talked about where with squad leaders being not micromanaging as such. You don't want to see that micromanagement. So I think that flexibility with formation such as a wedge, which I'll go on in a second to talk about, is important. So for example, I use the wedge at the moment, which is basically having a point man taking it's like an arrowhead essentially. It's you've got a point man leading it, and it's pointing into the direction where you want to be going, and then it sort of how can you describe it? It's like it flows backwards like an arrowhead, I suppose. And I find that mostly effective at the moment over a column because you can get a greater field of fire towards an enemy contact if he's right in front of you.
Yeah, you want to imagine if you imagine a wedge as the tip of a spear, you can use a wedge to move forward and you know consistently break through enemy defenses. It gives you a good viewpoint. So if you get your hands together and you make almost like a tent with your hands, that's a wedge.
V,
like an upside down V. That's a wedge with one man at the front and then to his sides to get back. So if that's the spear of the tip of a spear, then a column is like the spear like handle, if you like, itself. That's just like a straight line. So I prefer to use the column. Well, I mean, you apply these things to different situations. I use the column a lot because people tend to automatically get into a column. And a column is literally just one person behind the other, spread out like a snake, and it allows you to weave through cover and things like that. You know,
It's
columns
probably-
are really good for moving long distances.
It's probably the easiest to maintain compared to, for example, the wedge. But it's important as well, especially if you are going to use these terms out on the battlefield, that you what's the word? That you basically. Oh, I've lost my train of thought here now. I'll come back to me.
It's important. It's important that when you are using these formations, though, to talk about what's actually also going on around you and use the surroundings to your advantage, and that will basically take us on to calling contacts. That's going to be point 6 coming up. Point 6 then, calling contacts and making sure that your squad know when there's enemies about, when there's sightings, stuff like that. I mean, this is Jason. This is something that takes a while to get used to, isn't it? Really, it takes
definitely
a little bit of time. But the basics, and you'll hopefully have learnt this when you just play in the game, not squad leading. Calling contacts, bearing and grid coordinates. Now, some people will say, you know, we won't use the word contact if they've just seen an enemy. Like they just say enemy sighted, or another variant of that. Contact normally refers to when they're being shot at or shooting at people. But realistically, from my experience anyway, on squad, people are just using contact to cover everything. So I know we do when we play. We see somebody, even if they're shooting us or not, we just say contact at X bearing. And you want to make sure you're learning the basics of bearings and grid coordinates. As an armor player myself, what took me a little bit of time to get used to was the extra coordinates in squad. So Jason, because you had played Project Reality before, you knew a little bit more about it. But you know, normal grid coordinates are 6 or maybe even 8-digit numbers.
Digits, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But in squad, it's actually a letter and a number, and then then a keypad, isn't it? So do you want to talk us through that? You know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no. So yeah, like you said, there's obviously the real way of doing it. So you got your 6 digits, your 8 digits, but squad uses the Project Reality referencing. So for example, you would have F7, and then you would actually say keypad 1 to 9. Basically, it's the squares are actually divided into 9 different keypads. So that's how it's done in game.
Yeah. And once you've grasped that, what it allows you to do is it allows you to really that alongside bearings. Once you and the bearing is the bar at the bottom, the white bar that's telling you which compass bearing you're looking in. That information is absolutely invaluable, especially if you're a squad leader. If somebody's telling you that somebody's shooting at them, or if they've seen somebody, the way to inform the rest of your squad is by giving them that bearing or those grid coordinates. So if you see somebody, it's just literally contact at 068. Well, it wouldn't be 068, it'd be up to 360, but bearing at X bearing, and you'd move towards that, or you'd shoot at that, or you command the squad to do whatever they would do in the direction of that bearing.
What would you do in the scenario that you didn't have time to look at your map, and if you're under heavy fire, you haven't got time to look at your map and find some grid coordinates? What would you do in that scenario?
Yeah, great question.
Just front. Well,
So what you do is basically, if you don't have time to react, you just shout contact front and just start firing immediately. That's what I do.
Well, you do that when you do.
It's either contact front, contact left, contact right, or contact rear, and then you immediately start firing. It's short and sweet, and it's to the point, and then everyone else can actually use the trace ammunition, either from the LMG or the actual the rifles themselves, to actually reference where the fire and where they should be shooting, too.
Yeah, absolutely. That using those sort of calls, or just east, northwest if you can't get the actual numbers from your bearing, or northwest, northeast, southwest, east, southwest, whatever. You can be very quick with it, but you usually have a bit more time to think about it. In fact, usually you have enough time in squad, unless you're actually under fire, you should have enough time to actually work out what the other people are using. And I find it personally really useful. I don't know about you, Jason, but for me, if I've got a squad leader, okay, and I'm a marksman, if he says to me, we've got contacts north and contacts east, I'm not really sure which ones I should be shooting at. If he says to me, I've got contacts north and I've got contacts east, and the contacts east there's a machine gunner, I know that machine gunner is a primary target for me as a marksman. So another tip would be make sure you actually describe, reference what you've seen. Be descriptive. You've got time. So if you've seen somebody 100 meters away from you behind a rock, estimate. You don't need to say an exact meter, but estimate it. Far, medium, near. Something like that. And describe where they are. Are they in a bush? Are they in a tree? Are they behind a rock? Are they on a building? Because that sort of information makes the difference between having an effective squad or putting down effective fire and just shooting in a general direction. Okay, great. So that was calling contacts. We're going to move on to point 7 now, which is maneuvers. Stick with us for that. So, point 7, maneuvers. Well, this is sort of maneuvers and tactics, isn't it, more? Jason, it's kind of a mix between the two. Why don't you start us off?
Yes, I mean maneuvers. Maneuvers can be anything from simply moving towards an objective, or returning fire in a position and actually outmaneuvering and either left or right to actually outflank the enemy to eliminate them. It's again, Squad is a more casual game to the likes of Armour, so you wouldn't really see the rigidness of a maneuver in that compared to this. But what you always want to be trying to do, especially when you take contact or when you're in contact, is always trying to outmaneuver the enemy, try and outflank, just so, because if you have 2 fields of fire on the enemy position, you're more likely to eliminate them than if you have 1. And with manoeuvres, it's important to keep up your suppressive fire. I mean, Reese, what's your views on suppression at the moment in game, and you, Squirrel?
Squirrel?
Well, personally, when I've been playing, I've always used a suppression option. I've always put down covering fire, especially when allowing other teammates to move. So suppression is something I've always done, even in Armour.
I think in Squad, it's suppressing the enemy is really important. I would say in Armour, actually, it wasn't as important. I mean, stock Armour, it doesn't really give you much of an effect of being suppressed. You just see the rounds going off, unless you're using something like a mod or ace or something like that to enhance experience. Whereas in Squad, the standalone game, by hell, when you're being shot at. I mean, the screen blurs, things are going on, it completely throws you off. So if you can, if you're a machine gunner or just a normal rifleman, suppressive fire is hugely important, because if the enemy group that you're shooting at have that feeling on their screen, that shakiness, that blowiness, that massively inhibits their ability to perform a decent counterattack, to engage you. And if you're not being shot at, you're not going to get killed. That's the most important part.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, as a squad leader, it's really important to keep communicating with your squad to tell them that if they are shooting at an enemy, to maintain that suppressive fire. Because I've found, especially when I've squad led, that if you aren't telling the person to shoot at a target, they'll sometimes switch back to what can be described, I don't know, as a Call of Duty style mode of playing a first person shooter, where they're just looking for the kill shot, really. They're not actually thinking about how their fire is affecting that person behind that piece of cover. So it really is important as a squad leader to just maintain your communication with them and encourage your squad to suppress the enemy. And as well, you want to be varying up between the rate of fire if possible. So if you want a lot of fire going down, just tell them, pretty much, compared to not shooting as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. Tell them exactly what you want them to do, and if that involves moving, well, I think you briefly touched on flanking and not getting pinned down. That again, you got to relay that information. I mean, flanking in Squad is really, really important. If you're getting attacked from one location or you're moving towards a location, the rule of flanking is, or any attack in any position, you want to be attacking them from where they don't expect it to come. So if, let's say, the enemy team's base is at the north and you're at the south, try and come from their north rather than where they expect you to come from, which would be the south. Try and go all the way around and attack them from a position in which they're probably, going to be less defensive. That's Wargame 101, isn't it, really? But it's massively important for Squad. Massively important. Great, okay, that finishes up maneuvers. The next thing we'll be talking about is our last point, actually, before we round up the video, and that will be working with other squads. So, point 8, working with other squads. This is a really simple one, and really it's just nice to round off, I think, the video with. And that's, don't be afraid to, use the key that allows you to talk to the rest of the squad leaders. I think by default it's G.
It is, yeah,
but obviously, yeah, but obviously some people might have it set custom. But don't be afraid to use it. I mean, there's going to be guys that have more experience than a fresh squad leader. There's going to be guys that have less. But talk to people. If you need advice, do so. I will go into a game, and sometimes I will try and take command. So I'll say, hey guys, to the squad leaders, what's going on? Where are people going? Can this person go there? Can squad 3 go there? Can squad 5 go here? But sometimes I will go on a different server, for example, and I'll hold down the same button, and I'll say, can somebody tell me where they want me? Where do you want my squad to go? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to attack? So, don't be afraid to listen to what other people have to say. Don't feel like you're being belittled if another squad leader who's been in the game longer for you, if they've been in that specific session longer than you, tells you where to go, because the likelihood of it is, if you've just joined the server with your squad, and he's going to know more about the current battle than you. But equally, if you're there from the start and you think, do you know what? I've got a plan for this map. I've done it before. I've got a strategy. Don't be afraid to say, hey, look, squad 1 and 2, can you go and cap the first point? I'll take 3 and 4 and we'll go cap the second. And, be brave, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a team game. And your squad could be the best squad ever. I mean, you could be getting as many kills as you like, performing the best maneuvers, doing all the great inter-squad stuff. However, if your team isn't performing, well, you will lose that game. And
you're only 9 men.
Exactly. I mean, it's happened to myself, and obviously you, Reasoner, and Squirrel's been in squads where that's happened. And we've actually said during the game that it is a team game at the end of the day.
And we have seen a tendency of some squads just to go off on their own and not communicate and just try and rack up a huge score, though. Yeah, that's one of the problems that's just inherent with the game. Yeah,
and that's. I mean, it's just disruptive, and it's just not beneficial to everybody, really. I mean, Rambo squads are just not useful in any way, shape. I understand sometimes why people might do it, but there's no excuse for it really if other squad leaders are talking on the squad net and trying to be productive. If it's a bit of a mess, then maybe you do need to crack on by yourselves and get to doing what you're doing. But if you're fighting the whole fight for your team, if you're off somewhere else and your team's doing something else and you get pinned down, like I said, you're only 9 guys, and if there's 2 of the enemy squads there, or you're not coordinated with your squad, you're gonna get destroyed, and then nobody likes that. That's gonna make the whole squad mad if you just get shot on. So yeah, work together, work as a team, but don't be afraid to speak up and be confident. I think that's for me, that's a massive thing. Whether back from my Armour days when we used to train squad leaders, you'd know somebody who was going to make it and who wasn't. And even if they didn't really know what they were doing, whether, let's say they were running right towards the enemy, right? There'd be a squad leader who's running right towards the enemy, and he doesn't know where he's going, he doesn't know what he's doing, which is fine, but is not great really that they're going to get beaten. But then there's a squad leader who maybe is making the wrong decision by running straight towards the enemy, but he knows where he's going. And whether or not he's making the right tactical decision is irrelevant. If he's confident within himself, he's going to be more effective.
Yeah, no. So just to round it all up, if you guys want to quickly just give your key point or the key aspect,
the most important thing.
Yes, the most important for any squad leader. What is the number 1 key point? So, Reese, if you'd like to take it.
I think my number 1 top tip is to be vocal and communicate. That's mine. Make sure you're talking to your squad.
Squirrel.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal point of view, when I'm playing, constant communication from the squad leader is always key. If the squad leader isn't feeding me information, I'm just going to go off and do my own thing, which is going to be totally disruptive to the squad.
For me, then, I think I would agree with you guys, but I'm just going to throw a little spanner in the work. For me, I'm going to think. I think it's manoeuvring and fire manoeuvre. It's important that you might have communication, but if you can't effectively eliminate a squad or beat an enemy, you aren't going to win the game. And I know communication comes alongside that, but for me, the most important thing is actually firing and then manoeuvring.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that rounds up the video. Hopefully it's been beneficial for people. Hopefully it didn't ramble too much, but we don't want to get too serious either. You can subscribe to us by clicking the button down below. and all our social media information as well is at the bottom in the description. We'll be putting out more videos like this, along with interviews with some other YouTubers, and just general podcast-esque videos, discussing things, trying to give advice, talking about new content, and not necessarily just limited to Squad. So make sure you do check us out. Thanks for watching.